Russia's President Vladimir Putin has hailed the return of Crimea to Russia at a concert marking the 10th anniversary of the illegal annexation of the territory from Ukraine. He said Crimea had returned to its home harbor and that it would move forwards with Russia hand in hand. In this video, we will analyze the seriousness of this claim and the far-reaching impact it would have on the Russia-Ukraine relations in the future. So, Mr. Putin was addressing thousands in Moscow's Red Square a day after claiming a landslide election win. However, the vote has been condemned by Western governments as a sham. UK Foreign Secretary Lord Cameron said the elections, in which serious opposition candidates were not allowed to stand, starkly underlined the depth of repression under President Putin's regime. He also stressed that holding Russian elections in occupied Ukrainian territories was an abhorrent violation of the UN Charter and Ukrainian sovereignty. Germany, which called it a pseudo-election, while the US said it was obviously not free nor fair. Ukraine's president accused Putin of simulating another election. On the other hand, China, Saudi Arabia, and India all congratulated Mr. Putin. In a message to the Russian president, Chinese President Xi Jinping said that under his leadership, Russia would certainly be able to achieve greater achievements in national development and construction. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said he looked forward to strengthening Delhi's time-tested special and privileged strategic partnership with Moscow. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman praised the Russian president's decisive victory. The Black Sea Peninsula of Crimea was annexed by Moscow in 2014, 8 years before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and the seizure of its Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia regions. On Monday, Mr. Putin said the return of those 4 Ukrainian regions to Russia had turned out to be much more grave and tragic than Crimea. But in the end, we did it. It is a big event in the history of our country, he said, describing the occupied territories as part of New Russia. The crowd responded with chants of "Russia, Russia." Mr. Putin also announced a new railway that will run from the Russian city of Rostov-on-Don to Crimea via occupied Ukraine, which would serve as an alternative to the current bridge which links the peninsula to Russia's mainland. The existing bridge, which opened in 2018, has been attacked and forced to close twice since the start of the war in Ukraine. Earlier during the rally, he said a rail line from Rostov to the occupied Ukrainian cities of Donetsk, Mariupol, and Berdyansk had been restored and would now be extended to the Crimean port city of Sevastopol. Mr. Putin thanked the crowd for their support in his recent election success, which saw him claim a 5th term with a landslide 87%, and was joined on stage by the 3 opposition candidates who were permitted to stand against him. Russians had 3 days to vote, and people in Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine had even longer, in an attempt to persuade residents to take part. The president, who has ruled Russia since 2000, is now set to stay in power until at least 2030, the longest-serving Kremlin leader since Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin. During the elections, independent Russian watchdog Golos was barred from observing the vote, but reports of irregularities have emerged, as well as pressure on public sector employees to vote either in polling stations or online. Voters were not able to form and express their free will or to establish the true outcome of the vote, it said. The president praised opposition campaigners for encouraging voters to turn out in greater numbers, although he condemned those who spoilt their ballots and said action would be taken against them. Predicting Putin's win was easy even way before the elections. However, the real question is, what will Vladimir Putin do with his 87%? What will a 5th Putin term look like? The answer is simple. Putin 5.0 may not be so different from Putin 4.0. Don't expect an abracadabra moment where, with a wave of a magic wand, the hawk suddenly turns into a dove. Chances are that President Putin will continue along his current path of conflict abroad and crackdown at home. Looking ahead, that probably means a continuation of the war in Ukraine and confrontation with the West, plus an ideological campaign on the domestic front, as Putin pushes on with his transformation of Russia into an increasingly militaristic society. As for Russian civil society, that's already under intense pressure. That may well intensify. That 87% is an astronomical figure. True, it won't convince Western leaders that it is a genuine reflection of Putin's current level of popularity. But domestically, it allows the Kremlin to argue that the whole nation has united around Vladimir Putin and that the Russian president has the full support of his people. Crucially, he can now claim to have a popular mandate for his war in Ukraine and for the direction in which he's leading Russia. The 87% also sends a clear message to Russia's political elite. Take note, there's still only one man in charge here, in control, and that's not going to change anytime soon. And that's important for Vladimir Putin, less than a year after the brief but dramatic mutiny by the Wagner mercenary group. That uprising, led by Yevgeny Prigozhin, had posed a direct challenge to Putin's authority. In the end, it was the Kremlin leader who came out on top. 2 months after the mutiny, Prigozhin was dead, killed in a plane crash. One more thing about 87%, it's a great confidence booster. When you're president and you're told you've won yet another landslide, it can make you feel even more powerful, invincible even. In Putin's victory news conference on Sunday night, that confidence shone through. It was the confidence of a leader who's already been in power for a quarter of a century and is set to become the longest-serving Russian leader since Catherine the Great. The confidence of a leader who has constructed a political system which delivered him 87% of the vote and a 5th presidential term. He spoke confidently about Russia's progress in the war in Ukraine, where he claims the initiative is fully on the side of his country. He ripped into Western democracy, and he predicted that post-election, Russia would grow stronger.